Why is it that the more you give, the less you're valued? Pause for a moment before you keep watching anything else. Because if you've ever felt like you poured out everything you had inside and still ended up feeling invisible, what I'm about to share is going to sting a little. But it's also going to change the way you see yourself forever. There's a scene that plays out in thousands of different lives, with different names in different cities, and yet it always ends the same way. Someone meets a person, feels something strong, and from that moment on, without realizing it, starts giving more and more. More time, more attention, more patience, more apologies, more attempts to fix what's breaking. And the more they give, the further away the outcome they were hoping for gets. It's not a coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's a psychological mechanism almost no one ever explained to you. And today, we're going to take it apart piece by piece. Before we go further, I want to tell you something important. This isn't a video about techniques for winning someone over or tricks for manipulating a relationship. You're going to hear a lot of that elsewhere. Easy promises, magic formulas, and the truth is that almost all of it is built on a comfortable lie. This video is different. We're going to talk about something much deeper. Why we lose personal power when we become emotionally dependent on another person's approval, and what can actually be done to reclaim that power without becoming cold, without giving up on love, without pretending you don't care when you actually do. Stay until the end, because at some point in this video you're going to recognize yourself in a sentence, in a situation, in a pattern you thought was only yours, and you're going to realize it's actually far more common than you imagine. Let's start with something that sounds contradictory, but that psychology has shown time and again. The person who most needs to be loved is almost always the one who least manages to feel loved. It sounds harsh, I know, but stay with me a moment, because this isn't about deserving love. It's about emotional mechanics, and those mechanics can be understood, and above all, can be changed. When someone constantly needs a sign, a response, a confirmation that they still matter to the other person, something starts happening inside that almost no one notices in time. Self-worth, which should be sustained from within, starts depending on an external factor they don't control. And that's where the problem begins. Because when your well-being depends on something you don't control, you live in a constant state of alert. You check your phone more than you'd like to. You interpret every silence as a warning sign. You analyze every word looking for clues about whether you still matter. And that constant vigilance, that state of alert, isn't love. It's anxiety disguised as love. This is where a concept known in psychology as locus of control comes in. And despite sounding technical, it describes something you may have already sensed. There are people with an internal locus of control who feel that their emotions, their worth, their stability depend mainly on their own decisions and actions. And there are people with an external locus of control who feel that their well-being depends on factors beyond their reach, like another person's opinion, their messages, their availability, their mood. When that locus of control shifts outward within a relationship, the person starts losing emotional stability without realizing it, because they're handing their peace of mind over to someone who doesn't even know they're carrying such a responsibility. And here, I want you to think about something with complete honesty, even if only to yourself. How many times has your mood for the day depended entirely on whether that person texted you, on whether they replied quickly, on whether you noticed something odd in their tone? If the answer makes you a little uncomfortable, don't worry. You're not broken. You're not some strange exception. It's a deeply human pattern. And that's exactly why it deserves to be understood with seriousness rather than shame. There's a real story documented across various attachment studies that illustrates this in a way that sticks with you. Very young babies were observed in a situation called the strange situation, designed to study how they react when their attachment figure leaves and returns. Some babies, upon seeing their caregiver come back, calmed down relatively quickly, trusting that the connection remained intact despite the brief separation. Other babies, on the other hand, entered a kind of emotional storm. They cried inconsolably, clung desperately, And even once the caregiver returned, took a very long time to calm down, as if they still couldn't fully trust that the connection was secure. What's fascinating and also unsettling is that these same attachment patterns formed in childhood tend to repeat themselves almost identically in adult relationships. The person who learned as a child that love could disappear without warning, that connection was unstable, that you had to work hard not to be abandoned, often grows into an adult who chases, who needs constant confirmation, who reads any distance as the beginning of the end, not because they're weak, not because they have some character flaw, but because their nervous system learned very early on that safety wasn't something guaranteed, and it's been searching for that guarantee in every important bond it forms ever since. And here's the part that's rarely said clearly. Understanding where the pattern comes from doesn't mean you're stuck in it forever. It can be identified. It can be worked on over time. You can learn to sustain your own emotional stability without needing another person to constantly confirm it. But to get there, you first have to walk through an uncomfortable idea. One of those truths that's hard to accept because it contradicts everything we were taught about romantic love. The idea is this: giving all of yourself doesn't guarantee that the other person will value you more. In fact, it often produces exactly the opposite effect. And not because people are naturally cruel or calculating, but because there's a well-studied psychological phenomenon called the scarcity principle, which also applies to the emotional realm. Whatever we feel is available without limit, without effort, without any possibility of losing it, tends to lose perceived value in our minds, even when we rationally know it shouldn't work that way. This doesn't mean you should become distant on purpose, or play games, or fake disinterest as a strategy. That would simply be swapping one form of manipulation for another, and sooner or later it shows, because nothing built on constant calculation is sustainable over time. What it actually means is something much deeper. When you give absolutely everything of yourself without keeping anything for yourself, you don't just lose appeal in the other person's eyes. You also lose something far more important, which is your own center. And without that center, any relationship turns into an impossible burden to carry, because the entire structure depends on just one side. Let's talk now about something that tends to create a lot of confusion, because it seems to contradict everything we've been taught about what it means to truly love. We were told in 1,000 different ways that loving means giving yourself completely, that loving means sacrificing everything, that loving means tolerating, yielding, insisting, never giving up. And while there's something beautiful in the idea of giving, when that giving has no limits, it stops being love and becomes something else. Dependency disguised as devotion. Tolerating absolutely everything isn't love. It's fear of being alone. Constantly chasing someone who's pulling away isn't love. It's panic disguised as passion. Giving up your own boundaries to avoid conflict isn't love. It's avoidance. Abandoning your interests, your friendships, your routines, your personal purpose to dedicate yourself entirely to another person isn't love. It's a quiet way of disappearing. And here I want to pause on something you probably already suspected, but that few people have ever told you this clearly. The more a person disappears within a relationship, the less interesting they become to the other. Not because the other person is shallow or cruel, but because without realizing it, all human beings feel drawn to whatever has a life of its own, a direction of its own, substance of its own. No one falls in love in any lasting way with an empty reflection that exists only to please. Now, this is where many people make a misinterpretation worth clearing up before we continue. Hearing this doesn't mean you should start faking independence, playing hard to get, using indifference as a seduction tool. That strategy, even if it seems to work at first, is built on the very same dependency we're trying to resolve, just disguised in reverse. It's still a performance designed to win another person's approval, only this time wearing a mask of coldness instead of a mask of total surrender. What actually transforms a relationship, and above all, what transforms your relationship with yourself, isn't pretending you don't need anyone. It's no longer needing someone else to confirm your worth in order to feel that you have it. That difference sounds small, but in practice, it changes absolutely everything. Let's talk now about something that comes up in almost every serious book on emotional regulation, and that turns out to be one of the most powerful keys to regaining inner stability. You can't control another person's decisions, but you can fully control how you react to them. Said like that, it sounds obvious, almost like something off a calendar quote. But few ideas are as hard to apply in real life as this one.